Welcome to Who We Become Life Beyond Change. I'm your host, Amanda Lentz. This is a space for honest conversations about identity, resilience, and what it really means to rebuild after life changes. Here, we share stories of loss and hope, of challenge and courage, and of becoming someone new, even when life doesn't go as planned and the future feels uncertain. Whether you're navigating illness, grief, transition, or simply searching for meaning after change, you are not alone here. And I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. Welcome back to Who We Become. Today's guest needs very little introduction, but she deserves every word of one. You may know Samantha Harris as the Emmy Award winning television host who graced our screens on Dancing with the Stars and Entertainment Tonight. The woman with the warm smile, the quick wit, and the kind of on camera ease that makes everything look effortless. But here's something that Samantha may tell you herself. The most meaningful chapter of her story didn't happen under studio lights. It happened in a doctor's office when she received a breast cancer diagnosis, despite being young, healthy, and doing everything right. Since then, Samantha has become a passionate advocate for early detection, self advocacy, and holistic wellness. She's written the book Your Healthiest Healthy, built a wellness platform, and used her very public voice to make space for very private conversations. Today, I'm honored to have her here to talk about identity, resilience, healing, and what it truly means to reclaim your life after cancer. I am so honored to welcome Samantha Harris to the show. Samantha, thank you so much for being here today.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
I'd love to start at the beginning of your journey. So, can you take me back to that moment that your life started to shift? And did you have a sense that something was changing in a major way?
I had no idea. I was blindsided. This was something that I would have never seen coming because I was, by everyone else's accounts, as well as my own, incredibly healthy and fit, and sort of what we all thought was the picture of health. I mean, I had been on more than 10 different health and fitness magazine covers, from Shape to Women's Running, 4 covers of Muscle and Fitness Hers, and it was something that I really prided myself on, was being, incredibly fit and really, on top of my health. I thought I was eating right. I had a young family. My daughters were just 3 and 6. In This is back in 2014, and I was killing it at work. I'd worked so hard as like this little girl from Minnesota who just had dreams of Hollywood and being on TV, and then here I was at the top of my game hosting Dancing with the Stars and Entertainment Tonight and Good Morning America and all of these wonderful jobs that I had worked so hard to achieve, and I was finally achieving it. And I had a mammogram because I was about to turn 40, and I figured, well, that's what people do when they turn 40.
Absolutely.
And it echoed in my head that my grandmother, who lived to 95, was a breast cancer survivor, postmenopausal, and that my dad had died and succumbed to stage 4 colon cancer. And so cancer was very much in my family, but it was such a distant thought for me. But again, I just thought, well, here I have 2 young daughters. I should probably get that mammogram thing. And I had clear results, which is what I expected, and I was changing after a workout about, not about, exactly. So the details, these fine details we never forget. Exactly 11 days after clear mammogram results, I felt a lump.
Oh,
But I thought, that's so strange. I mean, what is this little lumpy thing? I'd had, when I was breastfeeding, I'd had 3 bouts of mastitis that finally led me to have to quit breastfeeding, which was so sad to me. Um, I really knew my body well. So I did know that these lumps had not ever been there before. But at the same time, I I thought, this is strange. Why do I have a very sizey lump when, again, I just had a clear mammogram? So instead of sticking my head in the sand, which would have been not only easy to do, but would have made sense really to do,
Absolutely.
I I don't know what it was at the time. People say, "Well, how did you know to push for answers? How did you know to get multiple opinions? How did you know? How did you know?" I didn't know. I just knew that I needed answers. Something in my body was just saying, "Well, let's just make sure it's nothing. You've got 2 little girls and you lost your dad to cancer." And I then came to learn there is actually a breast colon cancer connection with genetics. And so,
Mm.
but at the time I didn't know this. So I thought I'll go see my, my OBGYN, because she is the only doctor who ever really looks and does a clinical exam to feel around on your breast to say, oh, there's something lumpy here you should be concerned about or not. So I saw her. I'll try to quicken the pace of the story, getting into the minutia here, but basically, she said it was nothing. A month later, lump still there. Went to see another doctor because I figured I should probably just get a second opinion, but it's not cancer. So I went to my internist. He did the same thing, quick clinical squeeze and feel, and that's nothing. If you're worried about it, we'll just keep an eye on it, whatever that meant. And then it was the holidays. And by the time I came up for air in the new year, 4 months had passed since I found that pesky lump. And it was not only still there, it was sizey. It hadn't gotten any bigger, but it was sizey enough that even visually my husband could see it.
Oh,
And probably about the size of a quarter, but it was just coming up and over the surface. And let me tell you, I breastfed both my girls. I kind of had the flappy jacks, so it was there wasn't much holding up the boobs. Let's
yeah.
just say there's nothing much filling it up. So a lump was that was kind of a little bit gelish and hard and marbly, like you could see it. So I thought, okay, I've gone to my gyno, I've gone to my internist. Where do I even go next? Well,
Sure.
so I thought, okay, well, I guess I should probably go to a doctor who looks at breasts every single day as a specialty. Now, apparently, to me, this was shocking, but it should have been obvious that the only doctors who look at breasts every day as a specialty are breast oncologists. Because really, there's no other reason, unless you're maybe going to, as I did, a lactation consultant if you're having challenges with breastfeeding, right? There's no other real doctor that's only looking at your breast besides your gynecologist. So there I was. She said, no, I don't think it's anything. Let's ultrasound, let's needle biopsy, bing, bang, boom, came back, set up. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Um, we'll just wait for the final pathology. And the final pathology said it wasn't cancer. Okay,
Wow.
great. Yeah, good news. Good news all around. But she said, though, and this is where not only did I listen to my gut, but this surgeon listened to her gut. And this oncologist said to me, Samantha, I don't know what it is. Even though the diagnostics don't say it's not cancer, I think we should just take it out anyway. And so we did. And again, woke up from surgery. Good news, it's not cancer. So I'm celebrating, I'm patting myself on the back. Good for you to be vigilant. Nice work. Way to go. And then when it was time to get my final pathology results, I told my husband, like, you don't need to come with me. We've got 2 little kids that, they got to get picked up at preschool and they want to play at the house. Like, you don't worry about it. You just enjoy the day. I'll go to the dark, dank basement office of my oncology team. Well, not a team yet, but what became my team. And I'll get my results and look at the wound from the what was a lumpectomy, um, for the non-cancer. And this is where, again, twice this oncologist listened to her gut, and she, in the surgery, took out the lump that was not, quote unquote, not cancer. And she said, there's something on the margin. It was healthy tissue, but it or appeared to be healthy tissue under the microscope, or within, the OR to the human eye, not the microscope, sorry. And she said, whatever it is, I just felt like I should take a sample of it. And Samantha, not only is the lump I took out that we didn't think was cancer actually early stage ductal carcinoma in situ, which is breast cancer, But that little healthy tissue, and by the way, if that had been the story, case closed, wouldn't have needed another surgery because the lump was out, and we would have never thought anything else, and I would have been going on my merry way until, God forbid, what would have probably happened was I would have had a much more aggressive and invasive deep cancer that had maybe gotten out of control. But thankfully, she took that little bit of what she thought looked like healthy tissue on the margin, and that actually ended up being invasive cancer.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when my cancer story really started. That's when I had to understand, what are my options here? What do I need to do next? Since there was cancer on the margin, we have to go back in. So do I do another lumpectomy with radiation for 8 weeks, or do I do a single mastectomy, a bilateral mastectomy? What do I do next? Do I do radiation? Do I have chemotherapy? Do I go on a drug? Like what? And that's where the overwhelm of cancerversity begins, as we start to learn everything we possibly can. And it's quite a story. So there you go. I laid it all out there for you in every detail.
What a what a roller coaster. And I can't imagine, here you are, a young mom, 2 kids, working and advocating for yourself only to be told time and time again there's nothing to worry about. I just
Yeah.
ugh.
It's surprising, Amanda, to me that so many women I have spoken to, because I really do try to answer every single woman who reaches out to me about a breast cancer diagnosis or scare or worry or ongoing battle, who reaches out to me on Instagram, or Facebook, but Instagram's where I'm definitely a lot busier and more on top of actually checking my messages. But I've heard time and time again how many similar stories there are. Oh, Samantha, me too. I was walking around with a lump. Everyone said it was nothing, and it turned out it was cancer. And it's not to say that the diagnostic tests fail us, because they do save a lot of lives. I'm a national ambassador for Susan G. Komen, the largest breast cancer philanthropy in the United States. And,
Incredible.
they do advocate for regular mammograms. There are other types of screenings that are coming available and becoming now, hopefully, the CPT, the codes. Those are the codes that the doctors submit to insurance so that it's covered. Those are finally starting to make a little bit of progress. The hard part is we just don't have the studies that we have as long term and as large as we do with mammography. And I do a lot. Actually, I do a deep dive into QT imaging with one of the doctors has opened up her own QT imaging clinic, and was a surgeon and now is a functional oncologist. And we dive into it a lot. And the concern and the worries and the alarmists say, "Oh no, don't do mammogram because there's too much radiation, and so now that's killing everybody." And is there radiation with mammogram? Absolutely, there is. However, it is still one of the best diagnostic tests we have. Does it overdiagnose? It does. And the hope, though, is that we're catching those who then could not have caught it otherwise. If,
Absolutely.
so if money is no option and you can get an out of pocket ultrasound along with your covered by insurance mammogram, if you're concerned, that's really fantastic. There are some wonderful mobile services. I just did one with HerScan, and I am in partnership with them. So I want to be full disclosure, but I love that women can go to a mobile ultrasound
Oh,
unit
yes.
and be able to have a licensed professional breast focused, breast trained um, technologist. The person who is running the imaging is very important that they are a specialist in this area, so they know that they're looking at breasts every day. Um, and I also, having implants, whether you have implants by choice or implants after reconstruction, it's also nice to know that they're intact and they're not
Yes.
ruptured. So this is kind of a nice thing as well. And I'm not here to promote them, but I'm sharing about them because, interestingly, the out-of-pocket cost for that ultrasound by choice was actually less than my copay at the hospital with my oncology team. And my oncology team, I sent them my other ultrasound. They're like, "That's great, but you still need to get it here," because of course cynical me says they all just want the money, all the hospital systems, because they've spent a lot of money on their, on all their equipment, which I think is one of the challenges of the mammograms, because hospitals have spent so much money on mammography
Yeah.
equipment that to then change it up and adopt something like QT imaging. Thermography isn't as, it's a heat sensor essentially, and it really is showing more inflammation in the body, and it can kind of say, "Oh, wow, you're really inflamed in the breast, so go now and have an ultrasound, have an MRI, have a mammogram." It is not great for diagnostics, but it's another tool. There are lots of tools, and
Yes.
as the menopause conversation, thankfully, is getting more of a voice and people are talking about it and sharing, the same thing for breast cancer. We need to talk about it. We need to share. There is not one steadfast path. We need to find our own path, but we can only do that when we have the education and the insight from other people. And is that overwhelming sometimes? Oh gosh, incredibly so.
Yes. Yes.
So take a breath, because I know I've had to a lot of times.
And so you navigated this as a mom, as a public figure. And so how did you manage, finding out this diagnosis and going through that process while also maintaining, you know, family life and your career?
I was thankfully at a time in my career. At the time, I didn't think I was thankful because I was between shows, between jobs, between contracts. And of course, as I look back with 2020 hindsight, thank goodness, because I remember both times I delivered my daughters, I was working full time. My first daughter, both Entertainment Tonight and Dancing with the Stars, and then the second time, just Entertainment Tonight, and then whatever other jobs came along, because lots, things just kind of would come along, and I'd all of a sudden have like 4 jobs, and then, you know, you just take what you, because again, when I was 12, growing up in Minnesota, I said, "Mom, Dad, I want an agent. Can you help me get an agent?" And here I was in Minnesota doing commercials and industrial films and catalogs and cereal box covers and Target in-store ads and things like that, and I was driven from such a young age to finally be at the pinnacle. I mean, I went to Northwestern University, to the journalism school there. And while I was in college, I interned at Entertainment Tonight. So here were jobs that I wanted so badly. And now I had those jobs. So juggling them, just being a mom and giving birth to both of my daughters, and the pressure to need to return, A, for the income, B, for not wanting to lose it to someone else who wasn't leaving for maternity leave, even though that would technically be wrong, but it happens. Um, and just also because I love the job. I worked so hard, I didn't want to not work. So thankfully, in retrospect, cancer came at a time where I was really just being mom. I was really focused on my kids and family, and always worried about, okay, but when's the next job coming? But
Sure.
at least cancer came at a time where I could say, okay, I don't have to make a decision about giving up a job right now and walking away. Because by the way, whether you are, going on maternity leave or you have an illness, if you take leave from those types of jobs, you don't get paid. They may hold the job for you. I mean, Dancing with the Stars and my entertainment news job, actually E News, I was at when I first daughter, and then Entertainment Tonight. They have to hold the job for you because it's law, but they don't have to pay you because I was technically not an employee of the company. All the on-air talent have a different type of contract. So to make a choice for cancer, do I take as much time as I need to take care of my surgery, my recoveries, my information collection, right? So I was very grateful it came at that time.
And so you had just going back to, your cornerstone now is advocacy and early detection and living well. And you shared earlier a message that you would share with women just diagnosed as to just breathe. So if you were to sit down or talk to someone who just received this diagnosis, perhaps even following the same journey you did, where they thought it was nothing, then all of a sudden it's this life changing event,
Yeah.
what would you say to them?
We feel that, and I'm speaking in generalist terms, with the catch-all of we. But many of us really do feel that we have to have all the answers right away. And
Yeah.
especially with something like cancer, it's, we're so scared. We're coming from a place of fear, understandably. We're trying to gather as much information as we can as quickly as we can. Being in limbo is one of the hardest parts of the cancer journey when you don't know what course of treatment and action you want to take,
Yeah.
adds more stress on top of the stress. So, a couple of things. One, with a diagnosis specifically, if it is hopefully not an incredibly aggressive, fast moving cancer, then let me tell you, and this goes for about, I think 70 to 90%, and I know it's a big, wide margin, but percent of the cases that are slower growing. It's taken probably 10 or more years for that tiny little, you can't even see it with a microscope. It's so small little cell to actually grow into a tumor that could be found. So I'm not saying wait a year, but take a breath, take time to assemble a team that you feel, who you feel very confident in and that they're the right team for you. I always say get a second, if not even a third opinion. And for
Absolutely.
me, yeah, I mean that meant within a week I saw 3 different surgical oncologists. And then I realized, wait, we're all making a decision based on or advice to me based on one interpretation of pathology. So I went, drove myself to the hospital, picked up the slides from the tumor, and I drove them over to another hospital and I dropped them off with their pathology team. They did ultimately agree, but I thought, well, gosh, what if they don't agree? And one says it's invasive cancer, and the other says, wait, no, you guys misread that. It's this, it's not. Then I would have had to get, I would have gotten a third opinion. But the point is that to me also was important. And then when it comes to your treatment options, looking at the different opinions of the experts, seeing the best possible experts you have access to, making a pro and con list, and also don't walk this road alone. I have met women who say, "Oh gosh, Samantha, I'm so glad I'm talking to you because I can't tell anyone in my family that I'm going through this."
Oh,
And that is the most heartbreaking thing, isn't that, Amanda?
that's awful.
Yeah. So we need a team, we need a village, we need to have those around us. Thankfully, cancer is not whispered in corners anymore. So it is not your weakness that you were diagnosed. It happens to the strongest. It happens to the healthiest. It happens to the unhealthiest, right? Cancer is not discerning, unfortunately. But, and here is the where if you just have been tuning out as you've been listening because you're folding laundry or you're doing your dishes or you're driving your car and your mind's wandered, tune back in right now. Like redirect to what I'm about to say because this is what I want you all to listen to and take away from this conversation. You can be the best advocate for yourself, not only to push for answers, but to make consumer dollar choices. And what do I mean by that? We have so many products that we have in our home, that we're putting on our body, that we're breathing in, that we're eating, that unfortunately are to our detriment for us, for our family, that are leading to not just varieties of cancer, but also autoimmune disorders and heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's. So the great thing is that we can make a lot of changes. Can we avoid them 100%? Gosh, I wish I could say yes. But can we do a really good job to ensure that we're going to be the last choice for a host of any of these diseases? And these diseases can go, okay, yeah, we'll forget it. We'll just go back into the sewer system and come up to somebody else because she got us out of her body. And so that's how I approached my diagnosis. I needed to take back my power. So I went back to school. I became a certified health coach. I researched as a journalist as much as I could about why 1 in 8 women are getting invasive breast cancer and why younger and younger. And I learned it really is what we're putting in that is affecting our health outcomes and our longevity. And so I started to sort of, in a slow, methodical, systematic way, begin to make changes, not overnight, not a 180. I'm 12 years out almost from my initial diagnosis.
Wow.
And I am, and yes, I did, by the way, I did have a recurrence in 2024, a small microscopic cell that was left over from a mastectomy, is what we're assuming it was, because it had all the same markers. It was in the same exact location as the original tumor. 5% of mastectomy has the cancer come back, and that was without radiation, without chemo, going only on an endocrine blocker, and then also making what eventually became huge changes for how I was eating. Whether it was getting the toxins out of the foods from the high fructose corn syrup and the processed foods all the time, and eating animal products, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not getting enough fiber, not having enough color of the rainbow, and having enough produce and veggies and beans and avocados, healthy fats. That was a huge change that I detail. Really go into detail in that in my book, Your Healthiest Healthy, and on my podcast, I also explore all of these different themes. How do we get the toxins out of our beauty bag? I sat in a makeup chair day in and day out. I know, small violin playing for me, that I had to professionally go to work and sit in a makeup chair. But I also didn't realize what they were doing. I never read ingredients labels. I didn't know what parabens were or phthalates. I didn't know that fragrance is usually very toxic, because unless they're disclosing that it is, organic essential oils, and they're being transparent about it, because what fragrance tends to have are a lot of endocrine disruptors, and those mess with our hormones. And 80% of breast cancer is hormone positive, hormone driven. So bad. Same with the hair stuff and all the hairspray and the things I was breathing in. So I just started to make slow changes, and I'm not going to throw out my beauty bag overnight, but it was a long journey to get to where that cancer developed. And so it's been a journey, getting the cleaning supplies changed out in my house, and the pots and the pans, and getting rid of, storing food in plastic. But, oh, I know what you're thinking, Amanda. You're like, wait, get rid of all that plastic. Wait, I buy organic, but my spinach comes in a plastic tub, and
Mm.
my frozen berries for my smoothie, they're organic, but they come in a plastic bag. And you
Yeah.
got rid of the plastic in your house, but been sitting at the grocery store and in the warehouse. And so here is what my diagnosis 2.0 told me. It said, you know what? We can't be 100% toxin free 100% of the time.
Hmm.
That is where we fail. And that failure feels frustrating and overwhelming and stressful. And that's when I realized the wake up call of my breast cancer recurrence was that I have to be 10% toxic, and that's okay. And so this, what I call the 10% toxic method, was kind of born. And it's this idea of kind of, you know, acknowledge, assess, and activate. Acknowledge there are toxins in I live in Los Angeles. I am breathing the air. Let me tell you, it's not that clean, right? So I'm not going to stop breathing. Hopefully, right? That's my goal, is to keep going. And I'm also not going to move, because I really love the mountains and the ocean and the weather. So, and that's where my career is and my family. So I'm going to assess, okay, well, what percentage of toxicity do I have in all these other buckets, in my food, my makeup and skincare, my stress levels, my fitness? What level of toxicity are there? Is there? And then, for instance, before cancer, my stress was probably 90%. I exercised regularly, so that was a stress reliever, but I had no stress busting techniques. I didn't know about breath work or meditation. I didn't know about just going on a mindful walk and tune into the birds, even laughter, right? Things that are really great to focus on. So the 10% toxic method is really saying, okay, well, in that bucket of stress, I'm 90% stressed all the time. How do I get it as close to 10% toxic? I'm not trying for zero. I just want wiggle room. I want grace over guilt. I want to live fully and not fearfully, so I can have that 10% toxic life, but I'm going to add in some breath work. I'm going to add in some more time, social time, so I can laugh and have some fun,
I love
right?
that.
So just like, and so it's acknowledge, then you assess what percentage, and then you activate. Okay, what are those things I can do to implement to get myself closer and closer to 10% toxic? And I'm still working on a lot of areas.
But you're approaching it from a very educated perspective. The fact that you went back to school, the fact that you're researching and you're making these tangible, small changes so it's not overwhelming is just incredible. And so,
Thank
you know, as we close, how can people find out more about your work and the your book and just and how you're advocating and continuing to show up for others?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing my story with everyone listening. And for everyone listening, thank you for taking the time to sit and allow me to share. First and foremost, I'm incredibly active on my Instagram. Most of my Instagram posts are shared to Facebook. So if you don't get Instagram, don't worry. They're usually on Facebook. But the clickable links usually aren't available on Facebook. So Instagram and Facebook at Samantha Harris TV, like television, at Samantha Harris TV. And then you can actually send me a DM that says podcast, and I'll drop links for iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, so you can listen to my podcast, which is the same name as my book, which is Your Healthiest Healthy, because I thought I was my healthiest healthy, and I realized I needed to be, I needed to be even healthier. So Your Healthiest Healthy is the podcast, wherever you listen. And then, the other thing, you guys, if you want, I have a vetted beauty guide that is I tried so many different skincare, makeup, hair care, all of that, and I put together a list of brands that really met my very high standards to ensure that the toxic junk is not in them and that they also work. Like, right, I used to try organic beauty and just organic beauty. That was kind of the generic. And I put it on my face at, 7 a.m. and an hour later it was sunken in and it looked like I had no makeup on. Right. So this list, this list has makeup that actually works. And then you figure out what works among that for you. So if you send me a direct message, a DM that says clean beauty, I'll send that your way as well. And I have a lot of other great guides and smoothie guides and super fun stuff, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So Samantha Harris TV, DM me clean beauty.
Amazing. Well, Samantha, thank you so much for taking the time to connect today and for the work that you do as an advocate and a survivor and one of the most genuine voices in the wellness space. And
Thank,
thank you for trusting me and for everyone listening with your story. And
thank
so, for anyone listening, please do reach out. Samantha, we connected through social media, and so I'm so honored to have been able to connect with you, and will continue to support the work that you're doing. And so, until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and keep becoming who you're meant to be. Thank you for joining me today on Who We Become. I hope this conversation reminded you that growth isn't always easy, but it is always meaningful. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It truly helps these stories reach those who may need a reminder they are not alone. Remember, what happened to you is part of your story, but it is not the end of it. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are shaped by how you rise. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep becoming who you're meant to be.